Welcome back to 60 Minutes. For decades, I've listened to people's stories, and this is among the most riveting I've ever heard. Brett Archibald, a 50-year-old South African on a surfing trip to Indonesia, falls overboard in the middle of the night. One man, all alone in the ocean, fighting the elements, fending off sharks, and battling to keep his sanity. He hopes he'll be rescued. However, after 29 hours treading water, most people have given up on him. But not his wife, holding a candlelight vigil in Cape Town, nor a legendary Australian sea salt named Doris.
Good afternoon, delegates. Is that the best I get? You know, Justin just gave me a bollocking because I literally came screaming in here 3 minutes ago. I was late. I came up from Plet. There were roadblocks. I told them I had to swim, and it was against the current.
Yeah, perfect.
Folks, what an honor, privilege, and pleasure it is to be here. I'm not a motivational speaker. I'm not going to leave you with insights to read or understand about yourself or give you some idea that might help you change the way you think. I'm here to share with you a horror story, a genuine horror story. It happened 12 years ago. In 2 weeks' time, it'll be 12 years. Some days I wake up in the morning and I feel like it never happened. Other days, it is so real. I live in Plettenberg Bay, so I see the ocean every day. And there are times that just when I arrived in my room today and looked out over the ocean, I got a real shiver because this story is just still so radical, so many years on. It's a story that actually started 10 years prior to us going on this trip. I turned 40 years old in running a major big company for Wyndham Hotels and Resorts out of London. And a group of friends of us from school had always promised from grade 1. We started surfing when we were 6 years old. Before we turned 40, we would surf in Hawaii. And it never happened. And when we turned 40, I discovered this place called the Mentawais. And I rustled up a group of people to go. So 10 of us went when we turned 40, and every 2 years after that, we went. This was now 10 years on. I'd been 3 times. I'd missed 2 of the trips. Some of the guys, it was their first trip, but there were 4 guys who'd been on all 5 trips up until that time. It became a story about not just friends, but when I say to you it's a horror story, it's also a love story. I'm married to the most beautiful, amazing person on this planet. Her name is Anita. She's a tiny little Greek lady. She's the love of my life. She's my soulmate. And I can tell you there were times when I was out in that ocean, 100 kilometers out to sea, where I heard her screaming at me saying, "Swim, you bugger, swim. You're not leaving me a widow with 2 little kids." As I said, it's a story about friendships. We'd been friends since we were 6 years old. It's a story about coincidences. Folks, I'm going to share over the next hour a couple of little things that if they hadn't happened, I would not be here today sharing this story. And there's also a lot of synchronicity in this. I don't know if there's anybody in this room who's ever read the book called Synchronicity. It's a really thin little book, but it's an amazing, amazing story. It changed my life when I turned 30. And I urge, if you ever get the chance to read that, especially being in the farming industry or agriculture, I can stand here together with you. I own a wine and olive estate in the Crags Valley in Plettenberg Bay. I know the resilience and toughness needed to be a farmer. It's the hardest thing. There are days when you cry. There are days when you cannot believe what's happening to you. I've just gone through it. That's actually why I was late today. But it's, this whole story, I really fundamentally believe that if you can just listen to it, because we, the human being, are the most incredible beings, everything that has ever existed on this planet. And the saddest thing is we don't utilize a gazillionth of what our minds and our bodies can actually live up to and bear. But as I said, it's this group of friends. Are there any Australians in the room? Thank God. I'm not very pleasant about Australians. I love them now because they saved my life. But at the time, folks, I'd had an Australian partner. I lived in Australia for a long time. The Aussies had really messed me around when I lived there. And, my youngest cousin at the time was getting married. So I was leaving on a Sunday morning. We had a week leading up to that wedding. I was flying out on the Sunday after the wedding on the Saturday. I discovered on the Monday morning a 4 million rand fraud in my business at the time that I had in Cape Town. I knew I couldn't trade out of it. I was going to have to close the business down, let 40 people go in their jobs. Came home that Monday night, absolutely shattered, said to my wife, I can't go on the surf trip. I phoned all the guys, said, I'm not going. They were like, you have to come. I said, I'm not coming. Tuesday morning, I slept on it. Tuesday morning, my wife said to me, you have to go on this trip. There's nothing you can do at this stage. Go for the 2 weeks. When you come back, we'll decide what we're going to do with the company. On the Wednesday morning, a friend of ours, Rob De Beer, passed away. He'd been on a conference in Asia. He'd come back on the Sunday. Wednesday morning, he dropped dead. They picked up this virus in his lung, just dropped stone dead. And on the Friday, so now I bailed out of the trip. I've now phoned the guys and said, I'm back on the trip. On the Friday, our mate from Dubai, he phoned us to say he'd been diagnosed stage 4 melanoma in his back. He had to be operated on immediately, so he wasn't coming on the trip. And I tell you what, I was just devastated. This was meant to be one of the guys, it was his 50th birthday. It was meant to be just 2 weeks of heaven. Blokes, surfing, enjoying, catching up. Now we're back down to 9. I'm back on the trip, but Rob's funeral was going to be the following Friday. We wouldn't be there for it. So I go to this wedding, and it was so interesting. Late in the evening on the Saturday night, when we got into the church hall, it was out in Stellenbosch. There were the Australians sitting this side of the church, the South Africans there, and it wasn't me. There was 40 and 40. Got into the reception afterwards. The Aussies were on their own, and I went, this is ridiculous, guys. Come on, it's a unity of our cousin and young Luke, and I got everybody. I taught them how to dance to Jaluka and Zulu dancing, and we carried on. And about midnight, I was helping the family tidy up, and this young Aussie guy came up to him, and he said, oh, mate, do you know that my dad, I believe you're going to the Mentawais? I said, I am. He said, so is my dad. I said, mate, do you know how big? It's 2,400 odd islands in this archipelago. They stretch over nearly 250 kilometers north and south. The chances are negligible. His dad was on the boat that rescued me. I woke up Sunday morning. My wife took me from Stellenbosch, said goodbye to my kids, jumped on the plane. Who in this room believes in the power of positive thought? I'm the biggest proponent on it. Let me tell you why. When I took over this company in Europe, we were putting more bums on seats and flying more people around the world than anybody. And I said to all my staff, we all fly economy. Got to save money. New York listed stock exchange company, shareholders, we all fly economy. But I started to learn about airplanes, and I was flying 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 flights a week. And I'd always, especially on a long haul, I'd book an emergency exit. I'd make sure and then I'd just always book a window seat, and then I just start putting it out there in the universe. No one is going to sit next to me. And I'm not a big guy, and I will tell you, I wish I'd counted it, because it was over 65% of those flights I got on, and the seats were empty. And I could curl up in a ball and have a couple of hours kip. So I've been doing this the whole weekend. I get on this plane, I've said goodbye to my wife, get on the plane, I walk down to 29F, unpack my stuff, got my own pillow. All I want to do is watch movies and sleep. And I'm sitting there, and I hear the pilot go, crew prepare for takeoff, doors to lock. And I look around, and the 2 seats next to me are empty. And I'm high-fiving myself. Archie, you legend, you've done it again. Woohoo! The plane actually jerks. And then I hear, this way, ladies. And I look up, and coming down the aisle are 2 purple rinses. You know what they are? Those old ducks that put gentian violet in their hair. And they're coming down the aisle like this, and I am just praying, please don't let them sit in, please, please. There's no other seats on the plane. They sit down next to me. I never got the second lady's name. The first lady's name was Betty. She sat down and she started talking. And she never stopped. I had 56 hours of travel ahead of me, and this leg from Cape Town to Joburg to Singapore, Betty started talking and never stopped. We landed in Joburg, a few people got off, other people got on, the plane was jam-packed, we took off. I thought we were flying into the night, she'd fall asleep, not a chance. Pushing that buzzer, another glass of champagne, dearie. And Brett, sir, what do you do? I found out she'd been married 3 times, she'd lost 3 husbands, she had a house in Singapore, a house in London. She said, on this trip I might find my 4th husband. I eventually put my earphones on, I turned my back to her, I'm trying to watch a movie. She pulls my earphone out, she says, Brett, do you like almonds? I said, I love almonds. She says, have a handful. I said, thanks, Betty. And I had a handful, put my earphone. She pulled it out again, gave me another handful. After 5 handfuls of almonds, I said, Betty, do you ladies not like almonds? She says, we love almonds. We're just too old to chew them, so we suck the chocolate off and give them to you. Now that is a joke. But folks, that sums up my flight. We eventually flew into this place called Padang. So I flew onto Singapore, Jakarta. We booked a room there because we all came in from 6 different countries. 5 a.m. in the morning, we flew down the last leg down to Padang, which is this place. If you can see it, it's so interesting because there's a metropolis called of a town in there called Padang. But I want you to look at those. Who's been to Indonesia before? Quite a few of you. It is wild, guys. It's a massive population. I mean, nearly just maybe close to the American population, 298 million people. But they all live in the jungle. There's 2 major cities. The rest of them live in the jungle. I never wanted to get to land because what would I do if I ever got to land? Anyway, we flew in the big plane. We landed. There's a runway in here, if you can believe it. This is the little town of Padang, and this is the harbor. And this is where 2 things went wrong. We'd all flown early, weird flights to get there early because, like, as I said, many of us been on this trip before. The storms come in the night. It's a tropical place. We'd always got there late in the afternoons, got on the boat, sailed across. It's a 220-kilometer crossing. We wanted to set sail early in the morning. If there was a storm, we'd miss it or catch it at the end of the trip, and we'd be fine. We arrived there. I always say this, penny wise, pound foolish. And I've always tried to apply it in my business. In this holiday, we didn't. The last 4 times the guys have been on this trip, they'd always used an international boat, internationally licensed skipper, and a boat that has backup and ground crew. We, in our wisdom, said, we've been so many times, we don't need to save $500, guys. $500 between 10 people, $50 a head. We went with a local boat. Major mistake. There were 5 boats that went out that night. 4 of the international boats, they came back. On the radar, they saw the storm coming in. It was the worst storm in 36 years that hit the Mentawai Straits. Our boat, bilge pumps weren't working. And to top it all, as I said to you, this is the harbor. To save $50 or maybe $100, where we would have to be transported from the little airport there up along this road, takes about 2 hours on this really bad dirt track into that harbor to get on the boat. Our skipper had taken the boat up the river, the major river that goes up here inland. He had taken the boat up the river, and we were tide dependent. We could only set sail at 7 o'clock that night. You can imagine 9 50-year-old men arriving. We were dumped at this place called the Happy Family Karaoke and Bistro Bar. So many people say, Archie, how much did you have to drink before you had? I want to promise you guys, 9 50-year-old men, I was so grumpy. We managed to have 3 beers each, bintangs. Eddie wasn't there. We were miserable, grumpy guys. And we sat there. Some of the guys were having a kip under the palm trees. Eventually, the guide came back to us, and we were taken upriver to our boat. This just so you get an idea. The Indonesians are the most beautiful people, but they are filthy. They throw everything into the rivers, and it all gets washed out to sea. That played such an important role for me because I kept believing that I was going to find something to hang on to during my whole swim. We were then introduced to our boat for the first time. Just so you get an idea, it was a 60-foot, well, you would call it a surf charter boat. There was a cabin down here, 2 cabins each side there. Cabin on top where the crew and staff lived. This back area is where you spend the whole day. There's a kitchen, dining room, lounge area, and the back of the boat there. It's like a caravan on water. It's not even 2-star, but it's clean, it's comfortable. And we got on board here. There was a lot of hilarity. I was the only bald one. We were all going bald. I said, come on, guys, you're losing your hair. You've got to shave your hair. There was lots of catching up. But I hate this picture, but my wife insists I put it because I want you all to understand. This picture was taken. I knew it was being taken, and I was pulling my stomach in. I was fat. I was overloaded. I was weighing 90 kilograms, 90 kgs there. When I was rescued 29 hours later, my body ate 8 kilograms. That's 16 blocks of butter. Think of 16 500-gram blocks of butter on a table. That's how amazing my body is. I worked with Tim Noakes. My body utilized that fat to feed my brain, to keep me going and stimulated. There was lots of hilarity, joviality. We started unpacking our surfboards. It started getting dark. The skipper came to me. He said, Brett, please, you're kind of the leader of the group. If I can use the chef to help with the undocking of the boat, we can be the first guys to set sail. I said, just do whatever you have to do. He said, what about dinner? I said, I don't know. He said, can we get takeout? I said, fine. He went and got pizzas. 3 pizzas were bought by our chef. They were calzones. They were about this wide. They were about that high. They were folded over. They were full of meat. They were brought to the table, and I always say to people in life, when in Italy, eat pizza and pasta. When in Indonesia, eat nasi goreng and noodles, like what you see on the table here. That large man sitting next to me, Benoit Maingard, 6'5", 115 kilograms. He cut ours open. To this day, I've never eaten a pizza again. I can't look at a calzone. The meat inside it, we found out afterwards, was water buffalo. 2 of the 3 pizzas, so it was 2 guys to a pizza, 3 guys to a pizza sharing for the 9 of us. The 2 of those pizzas had been in the sun the entire day before they were put in the pizza oven. So 3 of the guys were fine. They ate their pizza. We ate ours. I'll never, ever forget Banger just chowing his. I don't think I had more than 4 or 5 bites of mine. I put it aside. I couldn't eat it. Banger said, hey, I'll chow it. He ate it. I washed it down with a Coke. It was so bad. And we set sail. And we were all sitting on the side of the boat. And just so you get an idea where we traveled from. This is Padang up here. This is the Mentawai Straits. From there to there is 220 kilometers. I fell off 110 kilometers into this trip. My lovely wife printed this out. I'll show you. She printed this out and said, but look, why doesn't he just swim to the side? It's like a swimming pool. 200 kilometers, guys. Think of 100 kilometers out to sea. There is nothing. There you can't. The only thing above the water is your mouth, your nose, and your eyes. Anyway, we set sail, and it was quite interesting. We went down the river. There were a lot of kids playing on the river, and then we hit the ocean. I took this picture standing on the side of the boat, and the reason I took this, I was so fascinated with this guy. We knew there was a storm coming. We just didn't know how bad it was. This little guy was steering this boat with his leg. He was running up and down. The boat was already going. It wasn't going more than 2 knots, and I actually said to my mate, I said, buddy, look at this guy. If he had to fall off that boat, just slip, no life jacket on, that boat chugging along, there's no ways he'd swim after and catch it. And I remember as we sailed past him, I whistled at him and said, hey, put your life jacket on. Little did I know, in a couple of hours, I'd be in that exact same position. Anyway, we set sail. It started raining. We all went inside. We unpacked. We started getting our rooms ready. I think I went to bed around 11:30. I had a BlackBerry at the time. Those are the state-of-the-art telephones. And I had spoken to Anita in Jakarta, but I hadn't phoned her. And she just said to me, please phone me before you leave to do the crossing and when you get back to the other side. And I hadn't done that with all the arguing. Anyway, I looked at my phone, and there was no signal. There is no signal once you get to the Mentawai Islands. There are 3 places where you fill up with fuel and water that you can make a phone call. Otherwise, it's just, which is brilliant. That's why you go there. But I hadn't sent it, so I quickly sent a BBM, WhatsApp, and sent it to her. Said, all good, and I went to sleep. And I woke up, folks, with our boat literally slamming. I was in the front bunk, and our boat was just slamming into these waves. And I remember saying, and my cabin mate, Jean-Marc Tosti, was awake, and I said, hey, Jane, this is radical. I've never felt a boat get hammered so hard. He started laughing. He said, 2 of the new guys, they were petrified about seasickness. I'd never had seasickness in my life. I grew up in Durban, on the beach, been in boats. But I needed to go to the bathroom. I climbed up this little ladder, and as I got to the top, this friend of mine's running down the passageway of the boat, and I just heard, help me, help me, help me. And it was Banger shouting from the inside. And Mark was running with the screwdriver in his hand. I said, whoa, buddy, what are you doing? He said, hey, we've got to break into this room. And what had happened was, with the boat smashing during the night, it was on a sliding door, and the door was going bang, bang. So Banger got up, bang, bang, Banger, locked the door. When he woke up feeling horrific and tried to go to the toilet, he tried to open the lock, and he broke the key off in the lock. So he was stuck inside. Mark burst this door open, and the sight that greets it, I'll never forget it to this day, is the 6'5" guy, Craig sitting on the lower bunk, and Banger emptying his toiletry bag, opening it, and just vomiting. But he didn't even vomit. It was almost like tar just pouring into his bag. Let me tell you, folks, in that moment, I was not the best friend on the planet. My first thought was, I have to get to the toilet before Banger does. And I sprinted down this passage into this little room. And that's where I sat, on that toilet. They're Muslim boats, so they've got these little hand showers in them. I put my head in that silver little basin over there, my butt on this toilet. I had a pair of shorts on, and folks, I exploded from both sides. I have never, ever been that ill in my life. It was just this black stuff. I remember vomiting. Now, when I woke up, the first thing I'd done is check my phone, and it was 1:30 to see if my message had gone to Anita. It hadn't. And I even said to James, I'm in trouble with my wife. And he said, don't worry, I'll phone her in the morning and tell her, and I'll she won't shout at you. I sit on this thing. I don't know how long I've been there. There was a stage where I was actually sobbing like a child. I remember saying, God, please, can I just die? I cannot vomit anymore. Eventually, I started feeling in bed. I was completely soaked. I'd just been washing. I pulled my shorts up, turned right out the bathroom, and walked outside. And the sight that greeted me was Banger lying there. He didn't even try and make the toilet. He grabbed a salad bowl from the kitchen, and he ran out. He was lying on the floor. He was vomiting blood, and there were waves washing over the back of the boat. It was the back transom, and there was all this diesel fumes. And I said, Bang, I have to get you upstairs. And I helped him up this ladder, and it was one of the worst moments of my life. Not only is he 6'5" and 115 kilograms, he had done a lot of damage in his trousers and been vomiting. He stank like you cannot believe. He got up the top here, and he dived onto this bench, and he just said, Archie, please find out how long we've got to go. And I walked into the skipper's cabin, which is just over here. I walked down here. There's a little fridge. I opened the fridge. I got 2 Cokes. I started sipping my Coke, and I walked in. And the first thing, I'm a skipper of a boat. I looked down. I looked at our GPS, the little circle, and saw the dot where we were. And we're not even on the halfway mark. And I lost it. I started screaming I actually shook the skipper. I said, what are you doing? He said, Mr. Brett, big storm. I said, why didn't you turn back? Another thing we found out, I told you, each boat has got a bilge pump. It pumps the water. Every boat takes water on. They pump the water out. 4 of our 8 bilge pumps weren't working. Our boat was taking on water. In hindsight, they say the skipper did the right thing because he was going into the storm. He was petrified if he did a U-turn. On the turn, these waves, the crest of the waves were these rollers bigger than me. He was worried the boat would roll over, so he decided just keep going, plowing into the waves, like that movie, The Perfect Storm. Anyway, I start really shouting at this guy. I'm so angry with him. I say, Skippy, how long to go? I look down and I see on the clock in the kitchen, in the skipper's cabin, it was 2:25 a.m. And I went into the bathroom, 1:30. I've been sick for an hour and a half. I've got nothing in me. So I finished my Coke. The skipper looks at me and he says, Mr. Brett, 10, maybe 12 hours. And I said to him, you've got to be mad. The whole plan would be into a Peugeot at 6:30 in the morning, sign our boat, and there's a lovely little surf break there. We'd all go for a surf, have breakfast, and then chug down to a place called Rifles. I said, 10, we're getting there at lunchtime. Why didn't you turn back? And I shook him again. I actually wanted to slap him. And I turned around and I went outside to Banger, who was lying there, and I said, bang, we got another 10 hours of this. I said, you need to drink this Coke. And he just started being sick again, just spewing all over the floor. And I've got a very macabre sense of humor. It was raining. We each had a locker there. I'd finished my Coke. I threw it away. Banger had his Coke. I took a T-shirt. I put it on. I grabbed his Coke. I said, are you going to drink this? He said, no. So I downed it. He started being sick again. And I walked to the railing. And this is where, it was slippery. The boat was going up and down that way, sideways. Folks, I grabbed onto that railing there and railing here. But I'm going to digress now. This is the morning. This photo was taken the morning I was rescued. I'm not pulling my tummy in here. That's how much weight my body utilized in that time I was in the ocean. But as I digress, 2 things, I stood there. I was holding on here and holding on here like this. And my brain, the first thing I saw was a life buoy. 2 life buoys right there. The one was 10 centimeters away from my hand. I said, Archie, just wrap your hand through that thing. The deck's slippery, there's boats all over the place. If something happens, and I vomited. Let me tell you, folks, the best vomit in the history of vomits. This black stuff went out like a fire hydrant. I actually congratulated myself and said, Archie, good one. Second one wasn't so good. It went out, the wind blew it straight back in my face. The third one, the puke all went down the front of my chest, and I was like, oh my God, this is horrible. And then I vomited again. And as I vomited, all I remember is this pain coming from the base of my spine up into my head, and they say I blacked out. Nobody knows what happened. Doctors figured out something to do with your vagus valve. I was doing internal damage. Your brain just shuts off the oxygen through your vagus valve, and you faint. They figured out I fell 6.5 meters. Let me tell you, we all did it afterwards, 6.5 meters into water. It's like hitting rock. I didn't even feel that. They figured I went under this boat. I got sucked underneath it. I went through 2 propellers. There were 2 props on. There's a twin prop. How I didn't get chomped up by one of the props. I was in a dream. It was the most amazing thing. I was in this white bubbles, and I was a kid again. And my mates had thrown me into a washing machine. They'd chucked some Omo in there. I was tumbling around in this white water. And I remember going, this is so cool. This is so cool. What they figured out is that I had now popped up the back of this. This is all the white water. It's the propulsion from the props. My head props up, folks. I'm in the water. I can see the boat where the back of this room is. I can see the lights on. I can see Banger there. And to this day, there is no word in the dictionary. I've read the dictionary from front to back to find one word. There's no word. In Afrikaans, there's a word, grillerig. I guess that's probably the major word that I can think. I saw Banger. I saw Buzz the night guard, who I'd shouted at when I was helping bang up. He was fast asleep in this chair. And I knew I was in the water. And in that instant, folks, I knew. I'm a sea guy. I've been in the ocean my whole life. I knew where we were, 100 Ks in. It's not a shipping channel. I knew this is where I was going to meet my maker. And the most interesting thing, I wasn't scared, ever. I just hit that water, and I came up. And then next minute, this little tin boat, this thing came straight past my head. How it didn't hit me in the middle of the head and split my skull open. It came past my head, and I just thought, I've got to catch that thing. And I put my head down, and I swam with everything I had. I don't think it was more than 10 strokes. I lifted my head. That little tin boat was there. It went up over a big swell. They went down. They went up over a big swell again, down, and they were gone. And that sea was pitch black, just with these white rollers coming, just pounding me. Folks, I can tell you, the thoughts that ran through my head at the moment. First thing I knew, I was dead. I was so angry. I just started screaming at God. I wasn't a good Christian. I'd grown up in a very Christian home. I grew up in Westville, in Natal, at St. Elizabeth's Church. I spent so much time being an altar boy there. When I went to army, I saw some atrocities, and I remember saying, it can't be a God. But interestingly, I've surfed my whole life. And every time I'm in the ocean, I'm sitting on my surfboard, I talk to God. And often my mates will paddle up to me and say, Archie, who are you talking to? I say, I'm just talking to the boss. And it's just the most amazing place I ever feel. It's my church in the ocean. And I'm in the water, and I look skywards, and I just scream at God. I say, God, this is so unfair. Nita and I had only been married 10 years. My daughter was 9. My son was 6. Interestingly, I believed my girls will be fine. But my son, when he was 2 years old, he had a virus that attacked his heart. We nearly lost him. He's got a funny left foot. He's got a thing called ptosis, and he's just been bullied his whole life. And even up to the age of 6, I remember saying, God, you have to help me. Jamie needs a dad. You're going to help me fight. And I just closed my eyes, and I just started thinking, you got to fight, you got to fight. And I have no idea why I did this. I put my hand on my wrist, closed my eyes, and I counted 1001, 1002, the old way of doing your pulse. Got to 15 times above 4. All I remember is my heart rate was over 180 beats a minute. I said, Brett, that is adrenaline. You have to calm down. Adrenaline's going to wipe you out quickly. You're going to sink to the bottom. 1996, I broke my neck. I promise you it had nothing to do with me. It was all tequila's fault. I downed a bottle of tequila, dived out of a 3-story building into a swimming pool that only had this much water, snapped my neck this way. That's another whole story. But I've done a lot of yoga since then. So in this ocean, I'm treading water. I close my eyes. I start doing a yoga mantra. Folks, I cannot tell you how quickly I got my heart rate down. I remember doing it. I couldn't time. I had a T-shirt and a pair of shorts on. Check my pulse. Low, okay, now what do you got? What did the skipper say? The skipper said, 10, 12 hours. How do you, I said, don't even go there. Work on 14, 15 hours. That's your worst case scenario. How are you going to stay alive for 14 hours? I knew my mates would come back. I knew my mates would come back for me. So, okay, how am I going to, I started swimming. I tried to lie on my back. I couldn't. The waves were just too big. I got pounded. I got pounded and pounded. In those dark hours before it gets light at about 4 o'clock, I'd fallen over around about 2:30. In those few, and it wasn't a long time, I got so exhausted. And I couldn't figure out why I was so tired, because I knew it didn't feel like I'd been in the ocean for that long. It started getting light, and then I started cramping. Interestingly, I had to go to the toilet 4 times, take a poop. I undid my belt, pulled my pants down, and did what I needed to do, and washed and pulled my pants up again. I remember saying to myself those 4 times, what are you doing, you arsehole? You're exhausting yourself. You know, I spoke to Professor Noakes about it afterwards. He said, Brett, your subconscious had decided you were going to survive. And when you got found, you didn't want to be found with a poo bum. That's why you did that. My mum puts it down to the fact she gave me such a fine upbringing as a kid, but I didn't believe that. But you know, my first thought was, I told you about the islands over there. This is a typical island. Every island, 80% of the islands at high tide are completely underwater, and the next day, so that's why it's so amazing. If you walk on those islands, you're the first human footsteps. The only footsteps are crabs and birds. But look at all those logs. Look at paper, plastic bags. Who's walked along a wild coast and not found a pair of flip-flops? I'm the eternal optimist. I was going to find plastic bags, blow them up, tie them in, put them in my T-shirt. I was going to find slip-slops. I was going to find a fridge. The year before, we nearly hit a fridge on our boat. I was going to find a fridge. It was going to be full of Bintang beer. I was going to climb in it. I'm going to be drinking beer. My mates are going to come back and fetch me. I'm chuckling to myself. I'm having all this laughter. And then I cramped again, and I cramped again. And eventually, I couldn't swim anymore. I was lying on my back, just trying to do this with my arms. I was getting pounded. Sometimes the only way I knew that I was going the wrong way when I was swimming in the water was my ears were getting sore, and then I'd go, oh, you've been pushed the wrong, and I'd start swimming, come up the top, gasp, take a breath, smash down again. But I'm treading water, and I have no idea why I did this, but I put my hand in my back pocket, and I found this thing, this room key, which I told you we'd stay the night in Jakarta. I'd booked that room. Now, I'd wanted to write a letter to my family. So I've gone over with a T-shirt. I've got this T-shirt over my head. The rain is coming down. That was a saving factor. The water was warm. The sun never came out that entire day, and we had lots of rain. There were times where I would try to make a little funnel, and I remember so clearly drinking fresh, clean water. But one of the interesting things was I wanted to write a letter to my family. So while I'm fiddling out, I take my belt off, and I try and scratch. Accident slipped, goodbye, love you. Don't ever try it. Highly unpleasant. I got halfway through the A, started bleeding. I saw the blood. I went blood, Brett, sharks, idiot, numpty, threw the belt away. And then I'm patting my pockets, and I find this little card. And this thing comes out. We're all old enough in this room to remember MacGyver. I loved MacGyver as a kid. So I look at this thing, and I take out this card, and I go, now the sun's going to come out, of course. There's going to be helicopters and boats looking for me. MacGyver, what would he do? Sun, into the card, Morse code, light. I was so convinced that this was going to save me. I put this in my back pocket. If you remember Castaway with Tom Hanks, he had the little Wilson. This was going to be my Wilson. I was so excited about this thing. Put it in my pocket, and I looked at this piece of paper. I remember it being $105 for the room. I took this in this plastic, and I went, and I threw it in front of me. And it landed in the water and went, in front of my eyes, this thing got towed away. And I suddenly went, current. And I knew the current. Because we'd done this, the current travels north to south. So where we'd left from down to the Mentawai Islands. I got so excited, folks. I was going along. I honestly felt, and this is a useless bit of information, but if you're in a big expanse of water and there's a strong current, because our upper bodies are the heaviest part of our body and you're doing a stroke, you're going to turn into the current. So I'd been facing it. This current was doing 2.5 kilometers an hour. It towed me 76 kilometers from where I fell off to where I was found. but it turned in the ocean, and that's why nobody found me. But I can tell you the next bit, after doing this piece of paper thing, all thoughts of playing, I sang songs, I talked to people, I had no idea how the time was. I took my mind completely off my situation and just focused on conversations with people and singing songs. Interestingly, I can't sing to save my life, but I love singing, so I was singing, belting my heart out. Interestingly, if I ever sang a song that had sad or horrible lyrics, I just stopped singing and sang happy songs. I'm going along, the sea had calmed down, it was still massive, massive ups and downs. I look up, I go over this wave, and I see a boat in the distance. And I go down in the trough, and I come up, and I see a boat, and I go, no ways. My boys are back, they're coming back. And true's Bob, sailing right up to me, my boat comes. And it stops, probably the length of this room away. And I can see it, folks. I'm at the front of this boat. I can see Banger, as you can see, 6'5". He's standing at the top there. There's another friend, and all this activity down at the back here. And I'm thinking, what a clever skipper. 65-foot boat. He's not bringing up to me. He's going to get the tinny. They're going to come and pick me up. I'm waving. I'm screaming. I'm shouting. The current takes me. I'm now in the middle of the boat. Banger and Niall are looking at me. I'm trying to swim to the boat. I can't. Next minute, I'm at the back of the boat, right at the bow. I'm going away from the bow. The boat's getting further away. No tender boats coming. What they'd seen was a piece of polystyrene floating in the ocean. It was completely waterlogged. It was under the water. Every now and then it popped out, and they thought it was my dead body. My bald head, whitened now, elbow, ankles, and that was on the port side of the boat, and they waited for that to drift up. Drifted up. I'm now at the back of the boat. They see it's not me, and all I saw, I put my head down and I tried to swim to that boat. I thought I was going to die. I was screaming, thought my lungs were going to come out of my throat. I saw 2 puffs of smoke come out of the top of the exhaust pipes up there, and they sailed away again. And let me tell you, I thought I'd melted down when I found myself in the ocean. That moment, I lost it. I was so over everything. I just remember screaming at God, saying, and the squall, I can still see it, and I've seen 2 of them happen. One happened recently in Plet. This dark cloud just came, lashing rain, came over me, gone. I remember getting some water, went over my boat, they were gone, and that's the last I saw of them, they were gone. But the sky was clear as this thing moved away. And I saw the weirdest thing. This cloud came out of the ocean, up into the air. And in it I saw the Virgin Mary. And it was the most bizarre thing. It was like this cloud, but the Virgin Mary is on it exactly like she used to look in the chapel at St. Elizabeth's Church, but she was made of Meccano set. I knew it wasn't real. I mean, guys, you remember, we didn't have Legos, kids, we had Meccano. And I loved it, but she was purple Meccano, and she was in this cloud. And I remember saying, God, what is that? I mean, what is that sign? Is it time to go? I told you about coincidence and craziness. My boat had stopped at 2:30 in the afternoon. That was 9:30 in the morning. They'd just sailed away. All my wife's family was still in Cape Town because of the wedding, and she'd called them all to the house. And she set up an altar that morning and called everybody together and stood around. 9:30 in the morning, said to everybody, please, can you stand here and pray? And she made this altar. And in the middle, that's a photograph of me many years ago when I had hair and we met. She's kept it in her purse. She printed that map out I showed you, and she put 3 candles on it. And she's a Greek Orthodox lady. She's the most spiritual human being I know. She prayed to the first angel. She prayed to God to send a legion of angels to find me. Second candle, she prayed to the Virgin Mary to hold me as only a mother can hold a child. And the third candle, being Greek Orthodox, she prayed to Saint Anthony and Saint Expedite, 2 patron saints of finding things fast and travelers. I tell you that crazy talk about coincidence. In the Greek Orthodox Church, the Virgin Mary is the patron saint of the sea. Her patron saint's day is the 8th of September. My birthday is the 8th of September, so is my son, so is my father-in-law. I didn't know any of this. My wife's praying, I am exhausted. I know it's an apparition. I know it's not real. It disappears, and I hear this noise. Ding, ding, ding. And I turn in the water, and there is a boy. There's a boy floating. It was that yellow color. It was the same thing as that, but it had a light on it, a red light, and a bell. And I knew I could swim there. I don't know how far away it was, but I could hear this thing, and I started swimming. And folks, I got so close to this thing, probably from here to the front table, and I just cramped. And I went, God, I'm not going to make it. I remember just putting my head down, swimming, lifting my head, and there was nothing there. Tim Noakes explained to me, I'm now starting to hallucinate, folks. I can still hear that bell. I can tell you I saw that bell. I'm going round and round in the water, screaming at the world, saying, this is so unfair. It was there. And next minute, my neck, my back, my ears, everything is just on fire. On fire. And I'm just surrounded by blue bottles. And do you know how happy I was? I was ecstatic. I knew how I was going to die. These things were all around me. I want to tell you, us as the human spirit and the human nature, our will to survive. I had zero energy. I turned into action man. I was pulling these things off. I was kicking. I was fighting. I was blinding. I won't use the language I used. Suddenly I was out. The big crowd of them was there. A few on me. I pulled them off. Professor Noakes said it was one of the things that saved my life. My anger was so up. My adrenaline was going. I was swimming. I was going. I knew I could do this. I don't know if I fell asleep. If I did, it was split seconds. All I remember is my wife was tickling my back. It was such a beautiful feeling. I think I would have nodded off in the water like that. Next minute, the back of my legs was on fire. I woke up. All around me were these tiny little silver fish. They were nibbling my skin. They got down to the back of my knees, and another stupid fact in life, the back of our knees, the skin there is one of the softest pieces of skin. From doing my breaststroke all the time, the seam in my shorts had worn my skin completely raw, and these little fish were nibbling the dead skin. It was so painful. My first thought was, geez, that's sore. Second was, I have to catch these things. In the water, I was trying to catch these little fish. They were all over, and then I just got clapped in the back, bang, in my left kidney here. And my first thought was, it's barracuda. They are prolific over there. They populate that ocean. All the good fish are being, but you have to fish at night to catch food. You catch these things, you chuck them back. Again, I'm so happy. Barracuda, a shoal of these, they'll strip a human body in 10 minutes. And then this thing pushed me in the water around like this, and I was like, that's not a barracuda. And I remember going under the water. The visibility was incredible. I'm swimming around like this, and I saw this shark coming at me. And I remember just going, oh my God! But folks, it was tiny. To me, it looked like the size of the London red bus, or the red bus that goes around London. This guy came at me, and the first thing I did, I lifted my head and said, buddy, just bite me here. And I was so happy. He hit me. In that split second of lifting my head, I looked at his fin. It was a black-tip reef shark. He was a tiny little guy. He was inquisitive. I've dived all over the world. They don't like being away from reefs. That's their source of food. It's their safety area. So I knew there had to be a reef there. In my mind, I went, I've got to catch this guy. How do you catch a shark? I'm going to catch him. I remember saying, Bear Grylls, take off your mask. I said, come on, buddy, come on. In that split seconds, I even thought of two things. I went, Archie, you've lost. You're not going to be able to throw your arms around a shark. But what you've got to do, as he comes, you throw your left arm down his throat, right arm over him. Now he's locked onto you. And you hold him, and his tail's just going to go like frenzy, and that's going to be your motor, and you're going to steer yourself to a reef. It was absolute desperation. I said, come on. I actually said these words, Bear Grylls, take off your mask. I said, come on, buddy. The other thing I thought was, hey, you idiot, you threw your belt away. How would a human mind think of that? Because I thought, I'm going to get to a reef with my engine, chuck the shark away, but I'm going to look, my left arm's going to be charred up. I need that belt. I need a tourniquet. In that split second of thinking that, the shark swam away. And it's the only time I truly cried. I sobbed in the water, guys. I sobbed. I was crying like a baby. I had a life coach at the time. She said to me, Brett, how bizarre was your life that you were crying because the shark was swimming away from you and not coming to eat you? But he was gone. Boof. Anyway, I was so pumped up. I'm swimming along. I think I fell asleep again. All I remember is the back of my head exploding in pain, me lifting my head up, and my eye and my nostrils just feathers and blood. And it was seagulls. 2 seagulls dive bombed me. But guys, they were big. I mean, all I remember, and they kept coming at me. Their wingspan was massive. They could have been albatrosses, but I don't know. I'm shouting at them. I loved Jonathan Livingston Seagull was my set book at school. I loved that. Hey, what are you doing trying to eat me? I have no idea. They dive bombing me. I think food. I've got to catch one of these buggers. I'm going to eat them. In the ocean, I close my eyes like this when I was peeping through my eyelids, and I put my tongue out like this. Come, hello. And in my mind, I could get one of them to land on my forehead. I was going to grab him, bite his head off, squirt his blood down my throat, and I would have eaten them feathers and all. With 2 squawks, they flew away. And I tell you what, I nearly started crying again. But interestingly, they flew in the direction of, and I'd read that they don't like ducks, they can float on the ocean, but they don't like it. There's birds they like to roost. As I looked where they were flying, I saw the sun peek out for the first time. It looked like it was getting dusk. I got into a complete panic because I knew I couldn't swim through another night. But I knew the birds were going to land. The sun sets in the west, the islands on the west. I was doing my piece of paper. I was going west. I was convinced I'd hit land before nightfall. And how day became night, I've got no idea. Suddenly, it was pitch black. It was just these big swells coming in front of me. All I saw was these jellyfish everywhere. And, a lot of Durban people might be here. I grew up in Durban, and a story that broke my heart was this kid who died at the age of 6. We were going down to the beach. My mom had dropped us on the beachfront with a couple of my mates, and the headline, Sunday Tribune, said, 6-year-old farmer's kid from Free State dies by jellyfish sting. And what happened, this kid was walking along Addington Beach. He picked up a jellyfish. He put it on his head. He said, "Ma pa, kyk my hoed." And the box jellyfish stung him to death. And I was so devastated by that story because we used to sit in the surf with them and just chuck them out the way. And I now had a plan. I was going to end my life with these jellyfish. As I was going towards him, I was going to pick one up and just shove it down my throat. Then I was going to get 2 in each hand, put one on my head and hold one on my throat and just end it. And I said all my goodbyes. I drifted into those things. They started singing me. I tell you what, I fought and kicked and screamed and shouted. Like the blue bottles, I drifted out the other side. Remember 2 things I told you. I hear 2 things. Plop, plop, them, me chucking them out the way. But I was pumped up. I'm swimming along. I can tell you that this little boat paddled up to me. It had 2 kids in it. It was a Peraha canoe. I said, guys, thank you for coming to save me. The kid in front, he had such bad teeth. I remember this, and I said, I'm going to take you to Cape Town with me and have your teeth fixed. But as I went to grab the front of that boat, there was nothing there. Tim Noakes said, I was falling asleep, the action of doing that woke me up, there was nothing there. I can also tell you I saw a 1634 Dutch East India boat with pirates on it. They sailed up to me. The 2 guys on the top, they shouted, "Swim, young man." I remember going, I'm 50, bro. I love the fact I'm young. They threw a white roped ladder with wooden staves on it down the side. Dunk, dunk, dunk. And I went to grab that. There was nothing there. I remember seeing the moon. It could have been an hallucination, but it was directly above me. I remember thinking, this must be 12 o'clock. Then I saw to the right of the moon, I saw Orion's belt, I saw the Southern Cross. Started doing my Boy Scout thing, took it down. As I took it down, I was still going the right way, doing my paper. I'm traveling the right way. I'm going to hit land. I saw these 3 stars on the surface of the water. And I was like, this is crazy. There are no stars. My brain suddenly realized it was villages. It was lights in the jungle. I didn't know at the time, so it actually was. It was a village shining in the jungle, another one. The islands at the time were over 40 k's away, but I could see these lights, and I knew I could swim there. I started swimming towards the first one. Current took me. Second one, current took me. Third one, current took me, and then it was all black again. And all I remember is thinking, I've been sucked out the Mentawai Straits into the Indian Ocean. This is it. I'm done. And I tell you what, I was so upset, and I have no idea why this happened, but my brain said to me, Brett, make a company, form a company. And I said, what are you talking about, form a company? And my brain just said, you're the CEO. I don't know why, I never knew Emily or Hillary. I named marketing, Emily, my left nostril, my right nostril, Hillary, sales, and my mouth, Bob, production. And I had voices for all these people, and I started talking to them. I'm not going to do the voice I did, but I was the CEO, and I remember saying, sales, what is sales? It's about numbers. We need numbers. Hey, Hillary, what is it? She says, boss, it's just numbers. Come on, numbers, count. I'm counting. 1001, 1002. Emily, marketing. Hey, come on. Boss, we need a happy company. We need sounds. We need music. I'm singing songs. I'm talking to Bob. Hey, Bob, how are you going? He says, boss, lungs are strong, legs are strong. Keep your head up. We can keep going. I tell you funny things. Bob, when my boat was in Tuapuzet Harbour, the skipper ran in to register me man overboard. All he knew was my name, Brett. To this day, I've got the original page of that thing from the Tuapuzet Port Authority, and he wrote, Brett overboard, Bob. And that was the acronym. And all the 2 boats that were looking for me, that's all they were saying. Anybody seen Bob? Any sight of Bob? But at one stage, I just remember, I think I must have been head down again. I just heard the girls screaming, look at the boss, sleeping on the job again. We working our butts off, and he's just kipping. And I said, girls, I cannot lift my head anymore. I'm done. I've said my goodbyes. I just want to sink down to the bottom. And Bob said, boss, come on. Legs are strong, lungs are strong. Lift your head up. And I lifted my head up. And folks, I saw my boat. And each one of my mates stepped through that gap onto this platform. It wasn't real. But as I swam to them, they each put their hand out. And as I went to grab their hand, I would fall and wake up and there would be nothing there. Tim Noakes said it was just a whole thing, my subconscious taking me through this, except the last one. Craig, my neighbor in Camps Bay, he stepped down there and he didn't put his hand out. And I swam up to him and I looked at him and I said, Craig, you're not here to save me, you're here to say goodbye. And he just nodded. And I said, thanks, bud. And I tell you, folks, I just let go. I said all my goodbyes. I went down into that ocean, like just sinking down. I had my arms like this. I was so content and at peace. I said all my goodbyes to my family, to my kids. But as I was going down quite rapidly. My ears started getting sore. And the deeper I went, the sore my ears got. And eventually, I tell you, my brain was frying. It was almost like chunks of metal were coming out the top of my head. And I remember saying, what are you doing? Come on, fight, boy. And I remember just going, come on, fight. And swimming up, coming up to the top. As my head broke the surface, like day had become night, and night had become day. And the sea, the ocean was like a glass mirror, folks. I saw two islands, one far away, one closer. And I remember thinking, okay, I'm going to swim. I started swimming. Those are the islands I'd seen with the lights in the night. I started swimming. I knew I could swim that far. I got so tired in a very short time. I took my piece of paper out, realized I'm swimming against the current, into the current, turned, said, I'm going for the long island, long far away. As I turned, I saw an Indonesian fishing boat. And I was so chuffed. I was like, Archie, you've done it. You've been found. And I tried to shout. I tried to scream. I thought I was saying, over here, chaps. My tongue was so swollen, nothing would come out of my mouth. It would go, so I told you I got a macabre sense of humor. I thought, you know what, I'm going to swim there. They all fish with hand lines. I'd done it to Banga 2 years ago. I'd gone overboard at night when he was fishing. Gone down, grabbed a rock and then held onto his line and pulled. And he got all the guys on the boat, guys, come and help me. I've got the biggest fish in Indo. And eventually I came up and I was bang. And he was I thought, imagine this. I'm going to do that to these Indos. I'm going to go down, tie their rope around my hand and pull. And he's going to pull me up. Can you imagine his face when this white mlungu comes up? Ha, 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 ha. I swam. I'm telling you, I was there. I was there on this boat. I couldn't shout. I was trying to. And you'll see on there's a little exhaust. These are like V8 engines, old tractor engines they put on these boats, and these fishing boats. I heard this gunda start up, boom, 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 big belch of black smoke, and they sailed away. And you know, folks, I'm not proud of this. I know I tried to end it, but I made a conscious effort. I'm going to drown myself. And I tried to put my face in the water and fill my lungs with water. I couldn't. I literally swam down. I lay on my back. I said all my goodbyes again, and I just took this massive breath of water. And it's amazing. Our lungs can breathe water in and out. I breathed water in, and it came out. But it was now warm. And interestingly, as it came, going down was fine. When it came out on my sore tongue, during the night, this is another crazy thing. During the night, I don't know what time, my teeth had started chattering, which is hypothermia setting in. Hypothermia, once it sets in, is irreversible. There was at one stage I was swimming with these two fingers in my eye socket and my thumb under my jaw, holding my jaw shut to stop it chattering away because my tongue was so swollen, I couldn't help it. My teeth were just biting chunks of my tongue off. And there was just all this blood. And all I thought was, it's going to attract sharks and they are going to eat me. And now I don't want to catch a shark. I don't want to be eaten. But these guys, they sailed away. I'm breathing in this water first time, second time, third time. All I remember is just this pain in my tongue. And I thought, Brett, what are you doing? You've already seen one boat. The sea's as calm as it's ever going to be. Fight. And I swam to the top. And in the distance, I saw a black cross on top of the water. And I said, God, shove that where it fits best. I'm sick of all these signs and everything. What that black cross was the top of the mast of a boat called the Barrenjoey. It was a bunch of 9 Australians celebrating a 50th. We were 9 South Africans celebrating a 15th. They'd heard when my boat was registering our man overboard, their skipper was in. He ran back, said, there's a Safa overboard. These Aussies said, we're going to go and find him. And 2 doctors, they went out the whole night, they couldn't find me. That morning when they set sail, so I see this, I can't see it, it's come closer, I'm just treading water, I'm not getting excited, what is this? Slowly, I couldn't see the rigging, I couldn't see any of all I could see was the mast and the cross at the top. And it came closer and closer, and then I saw the top of the boat, then I saw a guy on the front, the bow pointing left, right, and I was like, what are you doing? And folks, I put my head down and I was Chad the Clo. I honestly thought I was gliding through the water. When I got on board, I said, guys, did you see me swimming? They said, yeah, mate, you're going round and round and round in circles. But I was swimming with everything I had. I went 299, 300, and I lifted my head, and that boat was there, and I screamed. I said, guys, did you hear my scream? They said, yeah, mate, we thought there was a wounded buffalo in the ocean. But they sailed literally, they kept coming right up to me, and this is the first time they saw me, guys, on the most perfect day. That's my little bald head in the water. That's how close they were before they saw me. They saw me there, and I heard this roar come off this boat, and they said I came out the water like a water polo goalie. I was waving my arms. They said I came right up to my knees out the water. I remember going back into the water, and they were just so excited. They ran to the front. They threw this boy from the boat. It looks like it's coming to me. It landed where the front desk was. And from going up in the water like this, like a water polo goalie, as I hit the water again, my entire body went into cramp. And I just went down. The last thing I saw was this boy land, knowing I wasn't going to get it. I went under the water, and I just saw this guy running and diving off the bow of their boat. And I just remember going, I'm going to die. And I just went down. I put my hands like this. I remember talking to my wife saying, baby, I'm not going to make it.
We found the lost South African. Been at sea now 29 hours.
Go surfing this morning.
In the middle of the ocean. The nearest land is a long way out.
Nada.
Guys, that guy there on the left of me, he was a lifeguard. He'd seen me go into the water. He realized I'd cramped. He just ran and dived off. I was going down like this. I had my arms crossed, and I was just so at peace. I said to my wife, I said, Neat, I gave it everything. How ironic is I'm 10 meters away from being rescued, and I'm not going to be rescued. And I was just going down. I was so at peace, and suddenly this arm came under my arms here. My descent checked. I started going back up, boom, boom, broke the surface, and I just heard, we've got you, mate, we've got you. And it was this guy, Dave Carbon. He realized, they dragged me to the side of the boat. This is the picture that made world headlines. South African rescued. Look how amazing he looked. Guys, I ran up that ladder. They had the thing to pull me up with the bosun's chair from the yacht. I ran up that 9-foot ladder. I got to the top. I went, Aussie, 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 I love you guys. I'm moving to Australia tomorrow. Where do you guys live? But and they talked about how fine I was. There was nothing good about me. My tongue, my nose, my feet, the back of my knees. My blood pressure was 64/48 when I was found. I don't know if you know anything about it. I remember saying to Tim Noakes, how much longer did I have? He said, Brett, nothing. He said, you would have been swimming along, your heart would have gone ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. He said it would have just stopped. You wouldn't even know. You would have just sunk straight to the bottom. I said, how long with that blood pressure? He said, I gave you 10 hours, 16 if you're an Olympic athlete. He said, you defied all that, so I can't tell you, but it would not have been if you were doing any exertion more than 10 minutes. This is the man, the man who saved my life. Doris, he's a whole story unto himself. I can tell you, I would like to make a movie of him, but I tell you one funny. When I got on board, they called him out. They gave me warm water to drink. All I wanted to drink was ice cold tea, ice cold water or Coke. If I'd gone on board my boat, my mates would have given me beers. I probably would have drunk them. I would have been dead in 2 minutes. I told the doctors on this boat I'd try to drown myself. They immediately turned me over. They beat the water out of my lungs. They took 7 liters of water out of my lungs. I would have been dead of secondary drowning in under 2 hours. They bathed me. They put me to bed. But when I met this guy, I said, Doris, thank you for saving me. And you know the jellyfish, I don't know if you can see, but my body in the water was horrible. Out the water, it was even worse. And I was on fire. And I said, hey, mate, have you got any cream for this? He says, excuse my French, because I'm verbatim. Mate, you've been swimming for 29 hours. Harden the fuck up. I said, yes, sir, yes, sir. I ran around and said, can we get a surfboard and go surfing? Folks, I phoned my wife. I told her I'm not coming home. I stayed on the surf trip for 2 weeks. I met an old lady. She walked up to me, slapped. I thought after a talk she was coming to give me a hug. She slapped me around the ear and said I should have gone home to my wife. I'm a very naughty boy. But I can tell you, if I had, I would never, ever be standing in front of you today. I can tell you, I still today, when I see the ocean, I shudder. My mind freaks out. I think, my mates, I think their time was far worse than mine. I knew exactly my situation. They had no idea. They woke up and there was no one in the water. In my bed. They had no idea. They didn't know if I was dead or alive. But to wrap up, I also had to make peace with God. I had flunked God so badly. And the night I was saved, I was sitting there. I'd gone to sleep at 7 o'clock. I was completely broken. I woke up at midnight. Our boat was complete morgue. The Aussie boat next to us was a complete morgue. I went and sat where I'd fallen overboard, and I sat there looking at this, and I could not understand or figure out how I'd fallen overboard from there. And I was so angry about it. I was like, how did this happen? And this little arm came out the skipper's cabin, around my shoulders like this, and I was just crying. And he started crying. We didn't say a word. He just had tears. I had tears running down my back, my tears running down my front. And I said, Skipper, you've got to put me back in the water. And he said, Mr. Brett, I can't. I tie you to boat. He would have gone to jail for 30 years if I hadn't been found, or if I'd been found dead. His cousin, who was our surf guard, would have gone for 15 years. He just was hugging me. Anyway, 2 of my friends woke up. I went into the water. I threw my board away. I dived overboard. And I remember just holding this thing and just going, what was this about? There were times I paddled up, got on my board. I surfed for 8 hours that day, 3 sessions. Twice I ran up the beach, left my board, ran into the jungle, and just bashed my head until my forehead was bleeding and bleeding and bleeding. And then I was tasting the blood and saying it's okay. But I told you just 2 crazy things. There is no signal over there. When my mates were turning the boat around and the skipper was signing me that I was man overboard, my roommate looked down at his cell phone and he had 5 bars, and he got 1 call into his wife. He said to his wife, phone my mom, she's a charismatic Christian, and phone my brother, Pierre Tosti, who's number 16 in the world at one stage surfing, and get them to start prayer groups. I've talked to all the farmers on the South Coast. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people were praying for me. It just was like wildfire. It just spread and spread and spread. But the most radical thing, JM only managed to get a call to his wife. She phoned his mom, called Estelle Tosti, who's like my second mom, who's known me my whole life, and she said there's been an accident in the Mentawis, and Estelle said, where's JM? She said, it's not JM, it's Brett. He's fallen overboard, they don't know where it is. And she just fell to her knees. And I got told I have to go and see those ladies. And I went afterwards, and I went to have tea with them. And Gracie, their housemaid, who I've known since I was 5, the 2 of them, I'm having tea. I said, Gracie, tell me what happened. She said, the phone rang, Madam Estelle answered the phone, fell to the floor, and started speaking in a funny language. I said, Estelle, what were you doing? She said, I was just talking in tongues. I was praying. I said, what were you praying? She said, I just said, God bring him, God bring him, God bring him. And I said, Gracie, how long did she do this for? She said, maybe 10, 15 minutes. And I said, what happened then? She said, Madam Estelle stood up. She walked to her bedroom. She came back with her Bible in her hand. She said, Gracie, when I hold my Bible like this, I'm going to let it fall open. Wherever it falls open, God is, first passage I read, God is going to tell me if Brett's alive or not. Her Bible fell open at Isaiah 48:15. Said, yes, I will bring him. He will succeed in his mission. I'm there. I can talk to you for hours and hours. We've run out of time. I just want to leave you with 3 things. Following that, I'm on a most incredible journey of understanding in my life and where it's been. I'm not here to push religion down anybody's throat. I learned so many lessons. I can talk to you each about these. I'm around. Please come and talk to me afterwards. But I just want to leave you with these things, because I want every one of you tonight and tomorrow morning to look yourself in the mirror and just go, I am an incredible, incredible piece of machinery. You know, life is about choices. I was one of those persons. I chased so much in life. I chased things. I went all over the world. I had an incredible global career, but I had choices. But I've always, as a kid, I had this thing, my philosophy has been DSF, discipline, structure, focus. If you're going to apply discipline and structure and focus on what you're doing, you will always succeed. I didn't do it all the time. Let me tell you, in the water, my DSF was so focused, it was so incredible. But we are built, we as machines are the most incredible being. Our ability to do things. I'm not a swimmer. I'm like every single one of you. I went to work every day. I was a fat, overweight guy when I fell overboard. I've been incredibly blessed to have published this book. 5 people are going to, thanks to Justin, we're going to have a little surprise now. I really would urge you to read that book, not because it's about me. Because in this hour I've got with you, I cannot tell you all the stories. Humor is the best thing in the world. My motto is wake up, get up, stand up, dress up, and never ever give up. I gave up 8 times, folks. I never want to ever say that I did that again. We are all farmers. It is a tough industry we are. Be grateful. I was not, I chased the wrong things. Be grateful for those around, the people you work for, the people you work with, because those are your families. I'm leaving you with my 3 Fs. I call it faith, family, and friends. To see my kids again, I've made promises while I was in the ocean. If I saw my kids, I'd never do this again. I've broken all those promises, but I try, and it's always there in my mind. Faith, family, and friends. Friends. We've all got friends. Let me tell you, folks, I hated Facebook. Facebook was for people who are Facebooker, hooker, looker, or suka. Facebook was for people who didn't have friends. A friend of mine, she knew how I felt, phoned my wife and said, can I start a page called Searching for Brett Archibald, a Facebook page. 68,000 people went onto that page in some form or manner, shared, liked, commented. I don't know 68,000 people. That's when I talk to you about synchronicity, folks. Those prayers and those wishes and everything were the wings under my arms that kept me going. So in closing, you know, the thing that sticks out for me more than anything, I told you, I chased things. I chased money. I chased power. Not once when I was in the ocean did I think about how much money I had in my bank account, what house I lived in, what car I drove. I thought about my relationship with God, thought about my family and my relationships there, and my friends. I hope that resonates with you in some way. You've been a fantastic audience. Thank you very much.
the lost South African. Been at sea now 29 hours.
I'm so happy I'm alive, I can't tell you, boy. I cannot tell you. I honestly wrote it off 8 times, but I'm not religious, but that oak up there was looking after me because I you know, you just can do no more.